I'm here with Kate Brown, who's the lifestyle editor for the consumer group Choice, and we're talking about bottled water. What does it mean for tap water and public water utilities? Good to be with you.
Thank you.
So let's start at the beginning. How could you possibly compete with the magical water that comes from the pure water source and is put into a plastic bottle?
It really is the marketing triumph of the century, convincing people to drink what is essentially tap water that's been repackaged and resold to you for an extremely high price.
You've done some research about, well, Sydney Water's done some research about why people are willing to pay multiples on the cost of the water coming out of the tap. What conclusions do you come to?
The research that Sydney Water's done is really compelling because they've actually broken down the non-tap water drinkers into a couple of groups, and one of the most interesting elements of that was a lack of trust in the quality of Sydney's water, which seems astonishing, because it is such a good quality product. There are other people that think they need to boil the water, and then there are people that truly seem to believe that this bottled water comes from some kind of pure source or a magical spring somewhere out in rural areas, when we know that it's no healthier bottled water. We know it's no different, yet people are still happy to pay.
They're actually concerned about the safety of the water.
There are people that are concerned about the safety of the Sydney tap water, which is really quite astonishing and does explain why we are seeing quite large amounts of people buying all the water they intend to drink, when in actual fact we know that the water is absolutely safe. There's nothing purer about bottled water. There's nothing healthier. And in taste tests, we know that a lot of people can't distinguish the difference. So really all you're paying for is the marketing.
It is convenient if you want to drink water and you can't find a tap. How hard is that to combat?
There's no doubt that buying bottled water when you're on the run is very convenient, and I know even in my own life I will do that. Certainly if there were better places to refill my water bottle, I would do that. And I think in a way, water utilities need to fight fire with fire and use some of the same marketing tactics that beverage manufacturers use. So beautiful refilling stations, and availability of clean, maybe cool tap water so people can refill easily without having to go to a bathroom or run the gauntlet of a rusty tap in a park, I think would go a long way to changing people's perceptions.
It's funny, human beings are funny things. They presumably a lot of people know there's no difference. Presumably a lot of people know that not a lot of those bottles are recycled and that's not a great thing, and yet they still go and buy them. How hard is that to combat?
Yeah, look, we know that changing people's behaviour is one of the most difficult things to do, which is why companies spend millions of dollars on marketing. Once the genie's out of the bottle, so to speak, it is really, really hard to get people to change their ways. We know at Choice, from looking at consumer behaviour, we're not rational consumers. Feeding people logical bits of information doesn't really work. People know these things, but they're not actually changing their behaviour. So really, I think what needs to happen to change perceptions or hopefully change behaviour is a kind of multi-pronged approach to have the product available, to use a similar marketing tactics we know has worked to change people's behaviour in terms of buying bottled water. And education will go some of the way, but you really need to look at multiple different tactics to try and change people's behaviour.
And how big a piece needs to be done around convincing people that the water that comes out of the tap in Australia is safe to drink? I mean, you wouldn't have thought that that'd be a question for people.
Certainly when we saw Sydney Water's research on that, it was surprising. At Choice, we'd always thought it was around marketing and around convenience. So the fact that there were questions around quality was very surprising. So I think certainly there is some really great work that could be undertaken to educate people about the safety. The fact there's never even been an issue with the water, before is it's really intriguing that people have that issue. So I think in that sense, education is probably the best way to go.
And as somebody who's dealt with consumer issues for a long time, has this horse bolted? I mean, would it ever be possible to get Australians back to carrying water bottles around using bubblers and just never buying the plastic bottles that end up littering the environment?
it is really difficult to change people's behaviour. And, you know, you could say once the genie's out of the bottle, the horse is bolted, we'll never be able to reverse that. A good analogy, though, would be looking at sun protection. Certainly, I grew up running around outside without a hat or sunscreen, and I look at my own children, and it's been drummed into them before they leave the house to make sure they're carrying sunscreen, make sure they're carrying a hat. And I think, you know, it is that multi-pronged approach. It's education, it's availability, and then it's seeing other people change their behaviour. But to do that, it needs to be easy, it needs to be available, it needs to be convenient.
Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you.